Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are all of you out there in YouTube lands?
Good to see you.
Already got some pals hanging out with us Bear and Midway and Sarge and John.
Yep. And my voice. My mic is working.
Oh, there, I didn't know. Oh, okay. I was like, was that an issue? And I was like, oh, that's the thing we always have to wait on. See, I don't even remember our usual problems anymore. It's, it's a surprise all the time for me. But we hope you are doing well today. We are here today for a discussion that I'm pretty excited about of Queen's Shadow, the
Yes.
Padme novel, or I don't know if you'd call this more of a Padme novel or more of an Amidala novel because
Uh,
those are the not the same thing.
It's
Um,
true. As
but
we learned.
but by E.K. Johnston. This book just came out last week, so we're
Hmm.
just like last Tuesday, I guess.
Yep.
Which dates this streamcast, I guess. But we have both read it, and that's what we are here to discuss today. So we will say that we were talking about how to do this before the stream. So
Yep.
you might want to consider yourself warned for spoilers.
Hmm.
Although at the same time, there aren't a lot of spoilers in the novel.
Yep.
As much as I enjoyed it, the reasons I enjoy it don't have any much to do with like big super spoilery things that happen. Um,
Hmm.
it was a fast read,
It was.
midway. I mean, it's a um, young adult novel for that.
Well, in her first novel, Ahsoka, which is also in canon, is also a very fast read. And stylistically is very similar.
Yeah, don't worry, Blue. We're not gonna like. You'll still get a lot out of it if you read it. We're not gonna
Yeah.
like spoil it for you, because in a lot of ways, um, the book is more thematic than anything, and I think
Yeah.
E.K. Johnson tweeted something to that effect too. That's just part of her writing style. Um,
Yeah, she said she a lot of times will use the theme as the plot instead of having like a plot that
mhm,
serves a theme.
right,
And this is very much that. Like there is story and like things happen, but it's all in service of basically the point of the novel, as you can tell by the two-tone cover there, is it's her leaving her time as Queen of Naboo and going into serving as a senator of Naboo and navigating the differences and what that means and her learning how it's different. And so there's specific elements that happen, but most of it is her just seeing how it is and growing up at the same time.
right,
Because she was 14 in The Phantom Menace, and the book starts largely 4 years later, so she'd be
hmm
18. Because as we learn, queens have 2 year terms, and she served both of her 2 year terms.
right. And so like you really get this like shift like you mentioned, like it starts on like the election day for a new queen, like so
Yeah,
she and all her handmaidens and staff are hanging out, and so it literally begins with her still queen of Naboo, and then like transitions through her first year and a half or so in the Senate,
yeah,
um, and then like her first like big senatorial adventure is kind of the novel. So not a lot of things there to spoil, um, but because that's kind of not the point of what Johnson was trying to do with the
right,
book, I think. Um,
absolutely.
but if you had to kind of give, like, maybe this is not fair, but like a short summary of what you liked or got out of the book, what would be some of the things you would say?
I liked the back two-thirds distinctly more than I liked the first third.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first third was a little bit rough for me. Um, but I think it was necessary for where the story goes. But the first third is her transitioning out of being queen, as we said, and getting used to not being queen. And there's like a lot of hairbrushing. There's a lot of getting dressed. There's just a lot of bonding.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't really working for me. But I do think it's important because it's how she kind of grows out of that. So
Right.
what I thought was most interesting was this concept of Amidala and how that's different than Padme. So she's born Padme Nabere and takes the name Amidala when she becomes queen.
Right.
And Amidala becomes this persona. And one of the things I did think was really interesting about how she works with the handmaidens is they all make up facets of the Amidala personality. And her body double, Sebe, who's played by Keira Knightley in The Phantom Menace, fun fact, they almost become the same person. And the character of Sebe follows her so closely that she knows how to, if she has to pretend to be the queen, she knows what Padme would say. She knows what Padme would vote for. And they kind of share this character. And they talk about how, like, she had to come up with a voice that Sebe could mimic so that instead of trying to sound like Padme, they both sounded like this third-party voice, which was a really cool idea.
Right.
But I agree with Midway. The Galactic Senate politics was way more interesting to me. I thought that was done, which is ironic because it's the part that, like, one of the least popular parts of The Phantom Menace, but
right.
It never really bothered me in The Phantom Menace. And especially towards the end, you get Padme's big senator moment.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting how she made that work.
For me, I really enjoyed the kind of, I don't know, but political thriller kind of is the best. But, like, obviously politics is what I do for a living. So, like, I really enjoyed the Senate stuff and seeing, like, the political maneuvering and, like, the personal side of that political maneuvering, like, literally like making friends in order to get stuff passed. But I got a lot out of the first part of the novel because I really liked not so much the hairbrushing, but I liked that like you said, Amidala was like a separate creation. And particularly with Padme and Sabe, like I feel like in a lot of ways they were almost equally Amidala. Like at the end of the day, Padme was making the decisions, but in like you said, she could anticipate what a lot of those decisions would be because they always with the Batman. Because she just knew her well enough, but like literally like every other part of that persona was like interchangeable. So like in a real way, she and like her 5 handmaidens, was that it?
Yes.
At the beginning, I don't remember all of their names. They all end with the same letter. Because
intentionally, as we found out.
Yeah, like I thought. Well, and I like, I don't know. This is maybe a side thing we could talk about, but like the whole idea of like names on Naboo, like that was an interesting kind of thing, too. But I really liked that idea of not only are Padme and Amidala separate, but that like Amidala or like the role of queen is a thing bigger than one person. Because when I teach American government, we talk about the office of the president being more than just the one person of the president, and like literally seeing what those roles meant to Padme was really interesting to me. And of course, I just liked some of the stuff that was almost like spycraft stuff that was like something we talked about is mentioned a lot in the first part of the novel, but like that all the dresses she wore had like chemicals in them to make them resistant to blaster bolts, and like the idea that the elaborate makeup and hair pieces was like an intentional distraction so that you didn't notice who was the queen at the moment, because all of them could become that. Like I liked a lot of that kind of stuff, and just seeing the kind of interpersonal relationships, again, especially between Padme and Sabe, were one of the biggest things I got out of the novel, and because that kind of got the most focus at the beginning, I kind of really enjoyed the beginning.
Oh, for sure. I'm looking up the comment we just got in the chat about I'd completely forgotten Thrawn Alliances has a handmaiden, right? Isn't the person Padme's looking for a handmaiden?
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
So I'm looking up character appearances. See if I can make that connection.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Oh, we know some people that it wasn't.
Right. It's the yeah, it's DUJA. So it's not even the same. I'm assuming it's the right person because it says appears as corpse, so that sounds like the right character. But it's not a handmaiden name, which is interesting.
Yeah,
I'll
maybe
drop
she
the
was
link in the
more
chat.
of like a literal aid than the same type of thing. But because that was one thing you got too, was the tension between like Padme's handmaidens that were queen with her,
Right.
and then Padme's handmaidens that were more staff. Once she
Yeah.
become like, there was still like Corday obviously is still like a body double in Attack of the Clones, and so like there still is some of that, but like those roles shift dramatically, such that like there's a moment where Sabe is hanging out with the new handmaidens after everybody else that she was handmaiden with kind of went their own ways, and and she comments kind of to herself that it's different. Like she was closer to Padme, like in a like real interpersonal way. That these new people are definitely like her Senate aides, and it's a little bit different relationship there.
Yeah. Hey, Japman, and hey, Andy. I saw you coming in earlier. No, I'm with you there. That was one of the things I found interesting. What I found interesting about the friendship between Padme and Sabe, how would pronounce it, is the way in which they were very close, and yet there was still this kind of wall of being formal, and like there are certain things she would never ask Padme about.
Right.
Oh, even though she would be arguably her closest friend, she thank you, and that sort of thing. And I thought that was also interesting because honestly, one of my favorite chapters in the whole book was actually in the first third, and that was when Palpatine comes to visit.
Right. Yeah.
And in my mind, I guess I had always kind of thought of it as the Chancellor is like the most high-ranking person, and you know, I kind of think of it as here in the States, all of our states have a governor, and then we have a president, and the president would outrank the governor. So even if the president is from that state where the governor is from, the president still outranks the governor. But here, the Chancellor still saw Padme as his queen, and he still had to like treat her like a monarch. And Naboo in general is interesting anyway with their elected monarchs. And I know there's comparable levels of power in different countries that exist on Earth where you elect a leader that might have more like actual power, but executive power, that's the word I was looking for. But with Naboo, it comes with the pomp and circumstance.
Right.
Like, you know, you can make whatever argument you want about how much power the President of the United States has, but there's not like the President doesn't have handmaidens, and you don't have to wear like a formal headdress and all of this stuff. So it's interesting to see somebody elected to have sovereignty. I don't know, and just the kind of dynamic that makes, where you're never actually really that close to someone, and that's what I really like seeing Padme kind of come out of her shell to become a senator, as she became less formal. There's even Mom Mothma's party is a big scene with that,
right.
where it's the last time they do the body double switch, and she's almost like lovingly mocked by Bale for pulling that, and they kind of stop doing it, and she realizes that it's kind of silly. It's not that it's a bad idea, but it's not the right place.
Right.
And even when they do it in Attack of the Clones, it's still different. Like, Padme's dressed as a pilot. Like, she's not doing this other thing. Anyway.
Right. Not like standing right behind her as...
Right.
Right, yeah. It's definitely more of a body double than we are both Amidala at the same time kind of thing, the way that it was in the Phantom Menace, because I mean that's the whole idea of the Phantom Menace, is that most people like I don't know, like I was, how old was I in 1999? Like 12, I guess. Like I was definitely taken in by the body double switch when I saw that in theaters.
I go for sure.
And so, like, maybe I was just, I mean, maybe if I saw that as an adult and I knew that, Padme was, like I don't know, like the casting decisions or stuff like that for Natalie Portman, like maybe I would have recognized that. But she even says straight up that the only person in the Phantom Menace that knew the difference was Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I liked having that in canon, that Qui-Gon knew the whole time.
I mean, technically Obi-Wan would know, but I think the implication is Qui-Gon probably told him, or she just wasn't as close to Obi-Wan. So,
right.
But I mean, I think Obi-Wan knew, but whether or not Obi-Wan also figured it out, or Qui-Gon just shared it with him, I don't know.
But I just really think that's interesting. But like with the personal stuff, one of my favorite moments in the book too was when she goes to Alderaan and has that moment, not with Bail, who we see moments with her and Bail Organa, but with Breyo Organa, because they've both been queens, one hereditary and one elected, but like they have like a real personal bonding moment that I thought was really, I mean, apart from the fact that they're going to be the parents to one of her children, like even aside from all of that, I thought it was a really great, another again interpersonal moment between Padme and another one of the characters in the book.
Well, and to speak to that, I completely agree with everything you said, and I thought it was good to see Padme kind of be around the Organas in that way. It also helps to make it make more sense why the Organas took in Leia, because if you don't really know, you watch Revenge of the Sith, and it's like, well, he's like literally the only person and apparently wanted a kid, and now it's like, okay, it would be like a really personal thing he could do for Padme as a longtime friend of Padme. And it feels a little bit less weird. Like, wow, the Jedi don't spend a lot of time on background checks for their, like, adoptive parents, apparently. Like, you're here, you might as well take her. Jimmy Smits, I mean, I'd trust Jimmy Smits with an infant, so it should be fine.
I mean, I would trust Jimmy Smits with anything, if we're being honest. Like, But I don't know. And who was it? Was it? I can't read back in the chat that said about the ion pulse thing.
Oh, Midway.
I've not played through Battlefront 2, so I don't know that story. But that's a cool connection there too.
Definitely.
The ion pulse thing.
I think I watched the story through once, but I've not played it myself either. So that was not something I picked up on. But it makes it more sense why they made such a big point of bringing it up. But I really like that aspect of Padme's personality.
Yeah.
Is she, in a lot of ways, she's going through the same struggle the Jedi Order has. Is she wants to be this more pacifist, peacekeeping person that has had to face bad things and realize, like, ideals are really nice until your planet is blockaded, and then what do you do?
Right.
And how do you not? Because it's very admirable, and ultimately, I think more correct to not want to, be war hungry. But where's the line between that and letting your people get hurt because there's actual evil out there in the world?
Right. Well, and I think it really sets up the differences between Leia and Mon Mothma too, to see Padme and Mon Mothma disagree over the same thing, because Mon Mothma is very much a strict pacifist. Like we only do violent actions out of complete necessity and for no other reason. And to see, Padme having a little different take on it than Mon Mothma does, really kind of foreshadows the different take on it in books like Bloodline and Aftermath that Leia and Mon Mothma have on it too.
And what I appreciate too is it comes from the perspective of Padme, who is an established, prefers pacifism type character. She's younger. This isn't like the old gruff war dog guy. But she also feels this way not because she doesn't understand, but because she does. Like her planet has had to face this, And it's stronger versus somebody like Clovis in the novel, who hasn't seen this type of thing, and how he would feel about it. He would be, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Where she's like, no, I've seen the gravity and the importance of these decisions. And I think coming from a planet like Naboo, which values not just pacifism, but values art in the way that it values art and values. I really wonder how. This is bad. This is how my brain works. I read through this book and I read about Naboo, and I'm like, how is Naboo actually possible? Like, you get to like the epilogue, and Sabe's like, there are no slums on Naboo, but it's the closest thing to. I'm like, what do you mean there's no slums on Naboo? Like, I refuse to believe that there is not one dilapidated house in all of Naboo.
Right.
Come on.
I mean, the things that got me about how Naboo is possible is, like, one of her handmaidens was that Sashay was the one that went into politics.
Yep.
But who is which? I don't know. I should look it up.
I think it started with an R. Was the scientist one?
Yeah, the one that like does the art, but it's also science, and so like she wants to do like art in the Gungan cities to like study their vacuum technology, but that's also going to make like algae, which can make food grow faster. I think it's a really great idea, and it's a very Star Wars idea. But I was like, it's
honestly more of a Star Trek idea, to be fair.
I mean, maybe so, but I was
it's an idealized future idea.
But I was like, wow, this is. I mean, but isn't that what Naboo is? Like, Naboo is presented as this idyllic kind of place. Like, it's not Tatooine. Like, it's as far, like, metaphorically from Tatooine as you can get.
Oh, man. I think what I tell myself, the reason why Naboo is possible is it's presented as being a very low population planet.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you need, like, X number of people for a system to work. But after that point, the smaller your population level, the more likely neighbors are to actually care about each other and like actually help each other. So, whereas when if you go to Coruscant, a system like Naboo wouldn't work on Coruscant. There's just too many people too many different types of culture trying to exist. This is really diverging, but a lot of times too, the reason why Naboo works is because everyone has the same ideology. Like literally, their biggest fight is an ion gun too much military?
Right.
Like that's why the planet works, is because everyone thinks the same. They just don't want to admit that that's why it works.
I mean, like, I love that Padme has political arguments with her dad, because I feel like everybody when they're that age has political arguments with their dad. But like her dad's. Like, the argument is Padme expanded the royal military and her dad didn't like it.
Right.
But then, too, like, again, I see these political things because that's what I've trained myself to see. Like, it's really interesting, too, because there's a strong kind of thread of isolationism that runs through Naboo's political culture, too. Because, like, that was one of the things she says is her dad, is a carpenter, and he used to make a lot of things that he would sell or like use on other planets, and he stopped that.
Sorry, Andy just made me laugh.
Yeah, no, like there's a lot to that. I mean, and that's something that Padme comments on too. I mean, it's a joke, but like she says, like now that we have incorporated the Gungans into our culture has changed, and so like even that one change, like has meant something in like real world terms. Because it has been a deviation from that monoculture.
Well, and she even talks about how it's like a shame for Naboo that they isolated, a whole species of sentient life on Naboo, and that they kind of rejected the Gungans. And so the correct thing was to incorporate the Gungans, but like I said, that's when it gets complicated because the Gungans have a very different idea about war. And
I'll be honest, I was surprised that we didn't see a single Gungan in this novel, now that I think about it.
It just occurred to me, and the closest thing you get is she thinks of Jar Jar as her representative for no reason, because she doesn't interact with Jar Jar at all.
Yeah.
That's funny. The last Gungan we got in the book, I think, was in Last Shot. That Gungan.
That
Gungan.
That was a different take. But,
that was a different take. That's a good way to put it.
But I don't know. But like you were saying earlier, I really liked Palpatine in this novel too.
Yeah.
Like I really liked that scene where he comes in, and then either because like it's hard to tell if he does that because he knows what that is expected of him, or if he does that because like he genuinely feels some kind of deference. I mean, I can't imagine Palpatine feeling deference to anyone, but he at least shows deference.
Especially not a 18-year-old girl. Like, there's no way Palpatine is like, I'm gonna honor her.
Which there was a moment in the book, and I told you this ahead of time, where Padme is like, "Yep, we elect children to be our monarchs," and it's weird, but that's what we do.
That's what we do.
And the rest of the galaxy thinks it's weird, but it's Naboo, so.
But we still do it. I like how she had like a justification later. It's like, we elect children rulers because then they care about politics. I'm like, I just think there's an easier way.
But I love seeing the evolution of the relationship between Palpatine and Padme also.
Yeah.
Because as soon as she gets to the Senate, she like wants to put this distance between them. Because she doesn't want to just be seen as being in his shadow. But at the same time, like he's putting her off because he's planning to take over the galaxy. And
and she's going to be trouble.
But like all the way up to like it makes me wonder if Padme realizes the extent that Palpatine betrays her in Revenge of the Sith, because she is kind of like at arm's length for a lot of that, and like she's there when he declares, the Empire and everything, but like you don't really get like what's going through her mind at that point to really see kind of how far they have come together, and like where those paths cross and where they deviate.
Right. That's definitely something interesting, because it is more of a personal betrayal than it feels like in Revenge of the Sith. Padme feels at that point. Padme feels like, or it feels to me like Padme is responding more in, she's sad to see democracy go, but she's not like, my mentor is lying about the Jedi and taking over the galaxy. Like, she doesn't have that response.
Right.
She has, well, we're a dictatorship now. Dang it. Like, it's just, I don't know.
Well, and it makes me wonder the extent to which he is still her mentor at that point. Like, right. Like I don't know. She's obviously a lot closer to people like Bail and Mon Mothma by that point. So I don't know. It's an interesting. Reading this made me want to go back and I just watched Attack of the Clones a week or two ago, but it makes me want to see like how this informs some of this other stuff.
I really want to watch some specific Clone Wars arcs again.
Yeah, I was thinking about that
after
too.
That.
Which I had oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We're probably going the same direction.
I just had a quick question because one of the Clone Wars, not really Easter eggs, but like connections is Senator Bonteri.
Yep.
Like being like a proto-separatist in this novel, because the Onderon is one of the big separatist like planets by the time of the Clone Wars. But she talks to somebody several times.
Yes.
Who is that? Is that Palpatine or was that Count Dooku?
I was thinking it was Dooku. I would say it could be Sidious, but I don't think Sidious ever directly talked to any of them. I think it could be Dooku. I
mean, I know Sidious talked directly to the Trade Federation because we saw that. But
well, that's true.
But I was thinking it was probably Dooku, but it's never like even remotely. I mean, I guess we're meant to think that it's somebody separatist like, but I was wondering who that might be.
Dooku would be my best guess, or perhaps another separatist,
like one of the banking clan people or something.
Could be. It could be the Trade Federation.
Yeah.
Having her, but I feel like there is an actual, at least in the Clone Wars, it's presented like there is an actual friendship between the two that almost feels a bit betrayed at this point. But that doesn't mean it isn't repaired at some point too, because obviously there's a couple of years. Andy, I don't think we see any of the attendants on their own in the Clone Wars. There's an episode called, I think it's Senate Murders, which is not one of the better episodes, but it has one of the handmaidens murders someone. She murders Anno, the Rhodian.
Yeah, I liked seeing him in this novel too.
Yeah, it was good to see him.
But
And
that
I
was
think
just a
that's
quick
the
question I had. But so you can whatever it was you were going to.
Oh no, I was going to get to that too at some point. I was going to say with speaking of Clone Wars arcs with Clovis, him becoming a separatist too. I kind of wonder, in talking about Palpatine, do you think Palpatine liked her Senate deal? Like, how do you think Padme's Senate deal worked into Palpatine's plans at this stage?
I mean, to me, Palpatine's like his real motivations. Is that what you're asking? So not like
Yeah,
Chancellor Palpatine, but like
right now,
okay,
Darth Sidious.
yeah.
How did her
I mean, I
plan
feel
fit
like
into
his
Darth Sidious?
plan is to subtly let the separatist movement happen,
Yeah.
and because that allows for militarization, and I feel like neither one of those things are things that Padme would like.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I feel like to the extent that he is trying to both sow discord and create like a sense of security crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I think her trying to end piracy by encouraging cooperation doesn't really fit into what he's doing.
That was my first impulse, but I was thinking about it, and the Trade Federation gets really upset
Yeah.
with how this goes down. Even though it's, I mean, because of Clovis, the banking clan is obviously in favor of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the idea is Clovis is kind of skeevy, but not actually evil, which it's been a long time since I've watched the last season of the Clone Wars, but I feel like that's how his character gets resolved, is that he's not mustache twirling bad necessarily. But I could be remembering that wrong. But I almost wonder if this doesn't work for Palpatine because it makes systems like the Trade Federation feel more alienated.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you have the core worlds united and like for a thing, that's more an excuse to push away the mid and outer rim worlds,
Right.
who largely created the separatists.
I mean, I think Sidious could spend just about anything to his benefit.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think there's also something to be said too, because like a lot of was made about, and this is something I'd never really honestly thought about, that when Padme came to the Republic in Episode 1 for help, she ends up going around the Republic to solve the problem. And so like that's one reason why senators like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa are skeptical of her when she comes to the Senate, is because they think that her allegiance to Naboo will lead her to circumvent the Republic whenever it's convenient for her.
Right.
And so, like, when she's brokering this deal, like, there's a really kind of thin line between, is this interplanetary cooperation that is separate from the Republic, or is this interplanetary cooperation that is happening because of the Republic? Because on the one hand, if it's because of the Republic, then that commits the Republic military to protect it, which is how she ends up combating the piracy. But at the same time, like I don't know. So I feel like you could kind of spin that either way. If your ultimate goal is to create a separatist movement and cause a civil war,
yeah,
I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's a difficult thing to.
Well, yeah. If your ultimate goal is to just sow division, then either one planet getting left behind or a bunch of planets messing with a bunch of other ones. Either one does kind of serve towards your goals. You're right there.
I mean, and even if it's a success, it's a success that kind of shows how broken the system is.
That's true. One thing I've always found interesting about Padme as a character is that she really should have been a separatist.
Yeah.
Like, her political ideals and all of that. It's the reason why she's not is because she believes in democracy and she doesn't trust that the Confederacy of Independent Systems is actually going to stay a democracy because she doesn't trust Dooku. She thinks right from the get-go in Attack of the Clones that Count Dooku is behind her assassination. She doesn't trust the Trade Federation, obviously. So I think if it was just like Bon Terry and some other people that she trusted being the separatists, I think she may have considered it.
Yeah.
But because she felt loyal to Bail and Mon Mothma, who would be very against war, and therefore staying with the Republic, and she doesn't trust the Trade Federation, I think that's largely why she doesn't become one.
I mean, honestly, this is one of the reasons why I'm genuinely interested in the motivations of the Confederacy in this
Hmm.
in the Clone Wars, because like there is this real tension, and you see this in this novel too, between people who genuinely believe in democracy but who
Hmm.
also believe that their democracy isn't working.
Right.
And so like the extent to which you feel one or the other really explains like where you fall in the Clone Wars, but also how closely those sides are to one another.
Hmm.
Because it's like, do you believe in the order that the Republic gives in protection of the democracy, or you to believe that the corruption of democracy in the Republic is more of a problem? Like that's not necessarily a binary thing, and it's hard to necessarily weigh one or the other. Um,
Well, especially because I feel like in new canon, granted, it's largely through Saw Gerrera's partisans, but there's the definite there's the definite implication that more of the rebellion is born out of the Confederacy.
yeah,
Cassian would have grew up from the CIS,
right,
and came to the rebellion. And so I think that's that idea of, there were people in the Confederacy for the reason being they didn't trust the Republic anymore, not because they wanted to serve a Sith Lord.
right.
Um, and a lot of the Confederacy didn't know they were serving a Sith Lord, but the Republic didn't know they were serving a Sith Lord either.
Well,
You were actually in trouble either way you went.
well, and that's still one of the things. This is getting a little sidetracked, maybe that
Yeah.
interests me about Count Dooku, is because
Hmm.
I'm always interested in like how like did Count Dooku join the Confederacy because he was a Sith, or did he fall to the Sith because he was a separatist?
In the Confederacy, yeah.
Like that chicken and egg kind of thing interests me too. Um,
Hmm.
but there were a couple of other like random connections that I really liked in this novel. You know, I didn't know about the ion pulse thing, but
Yeah.
like the inclusion of Depa,
Yes.
like as the like I love that if they were gonna pick a Jedi Master one, I really liked that they didn't pick Obi-Wan, because I feel like
Right.
Obi-Wan would have been a really easy pick. But the
Yeah.
fact that they go with her, I mean, one, I like it because it's a female Jedi and a book about
Hmm.
female characters, and it kind of fits in
Right.
that way. But I mean, it fits logically because she was on Naboo in Episode One. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I thought that was a really well done kind of connection there.
Well, I loved it. I think if you follow the Kanan comics that
Hmm.
were a tie-in to Rebels, we learned that Depa was Kanan's Jedi Master.
Right.
So that's just kind of a cool 6 degrees of separation kind of connection to Rebels. Anyway, Depa has a very special place in my heart from the Legends novel Shatterpoint, which is probably still my favorite Star Wars novel I've ever read, past or current canon. And her arc is so amazing. So I have a lot of respect for that character anyway. So I just like, even if her story in new canon is different, I like seeing her come back. And I kind of liked the way it was described as like, Qui-Gon always looked at Padme,
Hmm.
and Depa seemed to like look through Padme up until that last point where she just did that Jedi thing of, here's my unsolicited opinion of you
Yeah.
that all Jedi give at all times.
But I really liked it too because I mean, I like Shatterpoint a lot too, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they've gone out of their way almost to make sure that Shatterpoint isn't contradicted by new canon. So like it's
Right.
not part of new canon, but like as much as possible, they have allowed it to kind of still be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I love just like how much, even just like in a sentence or two, they emphasize how much time Depa spends meditating,
Mm-hmm.
and like that really plays into like her character in Shatterpoint too. I think like her different way of connecting to the Force. Um,
Definitely. Yeah, that was a connection I greatly appreciated because that was a character I wanted to see more of.
but like I love, there's one of my favorite Star Trek podcasts says that one of the best things about Star Trek is that Star Trek is a place and not a story. Like it's a world that lots of, so you
It's
can have like a
it's a
Western story set in Star Trek. You can have
it's a people, not a place. Oh wait, that's right. That's a different
yeah,
universe.
um, but but I felt like a lot of what I got out of this book, and we already talked about like the theme as plot kind of thing, but like I feel like I learned a lot about the world of Star Wars in this novel.
Yeah.
Even though maybe not a ton of stuff happened in like a really plot heavy kind of way. Like I feel like I have a better understanding of Naboo after I read this novel.
Definitely.
I have a better understanding of Padme. I have a better understanding of the Organas. I have a better understanding of like a lot of what informs the prequel trilogy. And I feel like that's one of the reasons I like this novel, is because I feel like that is the point.
Right.
Like even the stuff like just learning that Padme's I mean, obviously they're all different people, but learning like they all came to politics for different reasons.
Yep.
And they leave politics behind, most of them, for different reasons. Like one of them, after she's no longer a handmaiden, wants to just go home and adopt kids, and the other wants to be an artist, and one wants to, go into politics herself. Like there's all of these like different types of things, and I just love that Star Wars allows for that. And maybe that is Naboo being different in a lot of ways, because like I said, I think it's presented as different. But I love just a lot of the world building in this novel too.
And I think that it's amazing that there's no counterpart novel like this in Legends.
Yeah.
It's Phantom Menace turns 20 years this year, and there were like, Padme episodes of the Clone Wars, or maybe a Padme-centric issue in a comic or something. But like, this is the first Padme novel, which is pretty incredible because she's such an important character. She's the mom of Luke and Leia, even if she doesn't really get to be an active part in their lives. And to not get to know about her, I think she's right up there with like, I want to know more about Shmi. Which is the thing we didn't talk about, how Padme has a connection to Shmi Skywalker.
Yeah.
In Tatooine at the beginning of the book.
I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, one of her like big focuses at the beginning was she wants to do something to like end the slave trade, in like not just on Tatooine, but like in general, and that's how she like gets involved in the whole piracy stuff. Is because like that's how a lot of the slaves are being transported, and like you see her and Sabe's frustrations with not being able to find a quick solution to that.
Right.
But then they're also like specifically looking for Shmi Skywalker, which I like too.
And it's kind of left as a mystery. They know she disappears and is probably not dead, but they don't know what happens to her, which I think works because I feel like in Attack of the Clones, Padme didn't know.
Right.
Because otherwise, when Anakin's having his nightmare, she'd be like, "Oh, your mom's fine. I found out she's living with the Larses, and she's like married. You have a stepdad. Congratulations!" Like, I didn't even think to tell you when I saw you all this time.
Right.
But funny story, So
I mean, it does. I don't think this is like plot hole or anything, but it does make me wonder why. I mean, I guess she can sense that Anakin's upset about it, like that morning when he wakes up and he's had the nightmare. She doesn't even say, I looked into this a while back and it might be a problem. But it does inform why she's so willing to go with him. To find his mom.
Well, and what would she even tell him if she told him? It's like, 4 years ago, I tried and it didn't work so great. Like, and it also, I mean, I guess he does go straight to Watto, and that makes sense. But, it also does kind of explain how they seem to find out what happened so fast.
Yeah. But no, that was a good part too.
As we went down, there was one thing I kind of noticed with this book, speaking of stuff that happens in Legends, is I feel like new canon has been more inclined to kind of like let us have these books that are more about like emotional journeys. So this book and Ahsoka are both not Ahsoka has more of a plot than this book, but they're both, the plot is more like the setting, and the story is really the character going through that setting.
Right.
You have a novel like Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which has a plot, but it's still largely about Leia growing up. there's been just more books that are just characters kind of going through stuff. And I feel like in Legends, that's why Legends got so crowded. Because anytime they'd release a new book, it was like, well, here's a new war, here's a new skirmish, here's a new Moth you'd never heard of, here's a new super weapon you'd never heard of.
Right.
And I was thinking about it on my way home from work today, trying to list off like the important Star Wars novels, and not that anything like you shouldn't read it because it's not important or what have you, but like the novels we have that define events that happen in the galaxy. And it's basically the Aftermath trilogy and Bloodline,
right,
that I could think of. Even though there's been several, but it's really like Bloodline that sets up where the First Order comes from, and what the New Republic is, and then Aftermath that sets up so much again where the First Order comes from.
Right.
But everything else has just been kind of like examining it. I feel like a novel like this, not just because it's about Padme, not just because it's about a female character and a lot of female characters, but I just think the story itself would never have happened in Legends.
I mean, even if you look at a book like Thrawn, like Thrawn has a plot, but Thrawn is about who Thrawn is as a character in a way that Heir to the Empire was not. Like that whole trilogy was like this war that Thrawn is bringing against the New Republic. Or even if you look at, this was kind of a book that was written to be part of Legends, the way I understand it. But even if you look at a book like Tarkin, Tarkin is about Tarkin more than it is about Tarkin overseeing the Death Star.
For sure.
I mean, in the same way that Catalyst is largely a book about Krennic.
And the Ursos, absolutely.
I think you're right. I think that it has given us a lot of these really genuine care. I mean, even a book like Most Wanted does that for Han and Kira, and Phasma, and Rebel Rising does that for Jyn.
I think Last Shot tries to be about something larger.
Yeah.
And it's probably you and I are both on the team. The droid Gatra is going to turn into something at some point, and it might be setting that up. But I think that's one where it tries to be about something, but it ultimately isn't really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of looking at the ones I have even, and they're, Lords of the Sith isn't vital. It's just a look at them together. Heir to the Jedi, which was supposed to be something in Legends, is largely just Luke on an adventure. It's just kind of interesting to me.
I mean, and I think it shows how devoted we are to these characters. That this can be a really, because one thing that I heard some people say, even about the Solo movie, so it's not just a book about Padme, is I don't need this story. In a lot of ways, I don't need a lot of these stories.
No.
But they give us really genuine character moments that really tell you who these people are, what the worlds they live in are like, and I don't read these novels so that I can see myself in Padme's shoes, but I feel like I understand who Padme is in a way that I didn't before. And that will inevitably make, the prequel trilogy more enjoyable for me. Almost like, we talked about, or you talked largely about, I guess, exclusively almost, Fakpa from a certain point of view did for A New Hope. Like, I see all of those moments differently now because I have all these other little vignettes. Like, this does a similar thing. Does for that. Another thing that this book has shown us, well, we can backtrack. I just want to say this before we run out of time, too. Another thing that this book shows us that they're more willing to do in new canon is give us Lost Stars kind of scenes.
Well, yes, that's been the young adult books in general.
A certain type of grown-up intimacy.
Yeah, I was if you think about it, so I think Ahsoka and Most Wanted are the only two young adult novels that don't have a Lost Stars scene. Or at least the implied that something happens.
Yeah.
Right? Because Rebel Rising does. I don't know how spelled out and how far things go in Leia.
I don't think it goes explicit very far.
No, I don't think it does either. But anyway, not that really matters. But it is interesting. But I also think it's interesting that I'm I feel like it only happens in the young adult novels. Yeah. I'm not sure. Well, no, Phasma has that scene because they all live in one cave.
Yeah.
I take that back.
But I remember reading it, and I think I texted you. I'm like, "There's a Lost Stars scene."
Yep.
But
it was in a strange place too, because like there was so much going. Anyway, it was just like, all right, some of these on an emotional roller coaster right now.
But I think too, to go back to what we were saying earlier, and I don't know what you're going to say. We can circle back to whatever you want to talk about too. But like, I think it shows a lot of that closeness between Padme and her handmaidens too, because that's something that she and Sabe are both wrestling with. Is like who they are as individuals and what that means for their relationships. Because Sabe's boyfriend, was it Tonkin? Is that his name?
Tongra.
Yeah, that guy.
The guy.
Not Typho. Not Typho. Little Typho-esque person.
Typho Jr., whatever he was.
That is in a relationship with Sabe. Like, he says to her at one point, like, don't you want somebody that wants you?
You first, yeah.
Right. And like, that's a real moment for them. Or, like, even the weird kind of moment she has with Clovis. Like it's such an interesting thing. Like, how much can they allow themselves to be committed and to be vulnerable? Like, that's definitely like a YA novel kind of thing, but I think it's a real, like real moment. Like, real, like, emotions are invested in
Tanra.
Tanra. There's no K.
It was going to bother me. The very memorable character of Tanra.
I mean, he was very memorable. It's just not his name.
Not his name. Anyway. No, and I agree with that too. And like I said, I like their Padme and Sabe's relationship a lot. That was one thing we were talking about before the stream that I thought was just really interesting. I feel like the book set up with Sabe and Tanra being a thing, and they're like specifically being a thing in that context of you will always pick Padme first, but don't you want? And she's always going to pick Naboo first, and then the Republic first, but don't you want somebody who will pick you? And then Padme and Sabe have that talk where Sabe's like, hey, you can try this too, and it's okay to like let someone in, and then Padme just does it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, we know. I feel like Clovis was written from the perspective of we know he's skeevy, therefore we just don't need to make him ever not skeevy. Where it's like, I just don't feel like Padme really had a chance to figure out that he's not skeevy. Like, I get him just like kissing her out of the blue is not good, but to be fair, Anakin does it.
Yep.
Han Solo does it.
Yep.
It's not like this is new to Star Wars and a reason to like completely write him off. I don't know. Hey, Bosk, welcome. But it's also kind of interesting to me too, because it's like then he's just like huffy. I don't know. And then we just never come back to it. And it was just like, I feel like it was building towards this big plot thing, and then it was like, and then it doesn't matter because she's gonna marry Anakin. I'm like, oh, okay.
And I think that was my problem with that. I mean, obviously it's weird and creepy that he just kind of assumes that because they spent time together that means she's in love with him, which is problematic for any number of reasons. But like the fact that the book, I mean, and maybe it's just an editing thing or a pacing thing, like that.
Right.
An extra couple of pages about this would have been too much or something. I don't know, but like the book doesn't give Padme a chance to kind of sit with that moment. Either to say this is traumatic because it was creepy, like it doesn't go there, or it doesn't say maybe this means I should be more open to romantic like she doesn't think about it at all. It happens and then it's over. And I felt like it was more for our benefit than it was for hers. And no, I completely agree.
And maybe I need to watch the Clovis episodes of the Clone Wars again, but I got the distinct idea that they had a relationship.
No.
And then she was going back to him, but like, and not one that was ever particularly serious, but the way he behaved, in Clone Wars was not like, hey, I kissed you one time and then you rejected me and then I ran away and then we never talked again. Like that's not how it felt.
I mean, they still got to see each other at work every day.
Right.
I don't know. The reason I didn't like those episodes is because every person in those episodes felt petty to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I realize they're all in like their early 20s, but still,
Right.
Be a little adult, please. As you're making decisions on behalf of the galaxy,
right.
let's be a little grown up about this.
Yep. And the classic, I feel like that Clovis episode is like the courtship of Princess Leia of the Clone Wars series. Yeah. Where it's like, we're just going to get really jealous for no reason.
And if that's the most we talk about the courtship of Princess Leia on this channel, that's good enough for me.
It's a classic. It's where the Night Sisters are from.
I think I referenced that like really briefly in my what to know before you read the NJO video. I was like, other stuff happens, but let's not talk about
it. It's fine. You don't need to talk about it. But no, I think the point I was going to make earlier was just that I like that canon is letting these kind of stories happen where we can just explore the character and we don't have to come up with a new super weapon. We don't have to come up with a new war. And I think it's what's going to help new canon be less clogged. And I love Legends canon. I'm not on the let's dump on it all the time. There's specific books in Legends canon that you can dump on. But Legends as a whole is great. And albeit imperfect, I kind of like a first draft, I guess is what I like to think of it as. Yeah. But it got clogged, and it just had too much going on, and it, if you didn't read every single novel, you got lost, and at times. And I think in the new canon, we won't have that problem as much, because they're much more willing to be like, we can just have a story about Padme being a senator, and you either read it or you didn't, and it's fine.
Well, and I think it gives people more ends to reading the novels, too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Because, like, find the character you like, here's a story about them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you didn't watch the Clone Wars, you could read this book. Like, even though it references characters that are invented in the Clone Wars, you'd be fine.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the novel?
No, I think I feel like anything else will just go into another 15 minutes. So I think we're good. I guess just generically, I wouldn't put it in my top 5, but that's not because this book is bad. That's just because there's been some really phenomenal books, and to get into the top 5 is insane competition. I wouldn't put it anywhere near the bottom though. No. There's parts of it where it's not necessarily my favorite subject matter, and that's a me problem. I think the quality of the book is solid. I think the quality of the writing overall for a novel is fine. There's a few like tiny things, but like, I haven't sat down and written 345 pages and gotten it published, so I'm not going to sit here and nitpick 5 pages. But I would definitely recommend it to somebody if if they wanted to know more about Padme, more about women in Star Wars, or more about galactic politics. Any one of those 3 reasons.
And I'll say this is a book that I didn't know that I would like, that I ended up really enjoying.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the best. I mean, maybe that's unfair to say that that's praise, but I really did enjoy it, and I read it pretty quickly too.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it all in one day.
Yeah.
For life reasons, but
when I was streaming Force Unleashed, and I was like, "Oh, Django will be here eventually. Maybe he's still waiting for his tires."
Yeah, it's like 9 hours. Anyway, that was a day.
That was a day. Speaking of me streaming, though,
it was a week ago tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Anyway.
Yeah, my hope, my week's been a little bit wacky, and I apologize for that. But my hope is tomorrow to stream Force Unleashed, and I believe it's with Bail Organa. I believe it's Imperial Felucia. So that'll be fun if you guys want to join us at noon-ish, maybe 1-ish Eastern Standard Time.
And we've got some other stuff on the channel you should check out. Your ongoing book club series for Aftermath is making its way through Life Debt. I had another Funko Pop video go up yesterday. A lot of stuff you should check out. And if you're not already, you can follow us on all the social medias. Assuming that Instagram and Facebook are working again, you can find us there. You can also find us on the tweeters and on our Discord channel, which you can find.
I definitely encourage, if you haven't already, to join our Discord server. We have some really good conversations in there, and I think it would be more fun if we could get some more people going. But I enjoy hanging out there with all you guys.
But especially if you've read this book or you're going to read it and would like to talk to us, Discord is one of the best ways to do that with us. And we would love to see you there. But I think that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are anticipating talking about the season finale of Resistance. So unless a title comes out between now and 4 o'clock next Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be chatting up the finale of Resistance and just having our minds collectively blown by that.
We've had the standard rule is we pick a topic, and it's this topic unless there's an episode 9 title. In which case, the topic becomes the episode 9 title. But yeah, we should hopefully be talking about Resistance. I can't believe the season's almost over.
Yeah, it's gone by quick.
Yeah, it has.
But that's going to do it for us today. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.